Welcome to Invested in Climate. Protecting the planet and decarbonizing the global economy is the challenge of our time. We all have a role to play, and the opportunity we face is unprecedented. Invested in Climate aims to help people do more to address climate change through their work, investment, lifestyle, and activism. I'm your host, Jason Rissman. I support a growing community of top climate and ESG leaders as the Chief Experience Officer at NationsWell, and I'm an advisor to the climate practice at IDEO. I'm also an investor and startup advisor, and when it comes to climate action, I know I'll be a lifelong learner, always looking to have more impact. If you like what you hear, give us a good rating on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you found us. Sign up for updates and suggest ideas for future episodes at investedinclimate.com. Follow us on social, subscribe, and spread the word. Thanks for joining.
RaiseGreen exists to make it easy for you to take real climate action by putting your money into clean energy and climate projects at the community scale. And every day that goes by that we don't put capital toward climate solutions is a day that we lose to make direct and significant societal change. So step up and take action.
Climate solutions need to be deployed at scale, across industries, and ultimately influence the lives of, well, everyone. And yet, it's still hard for most people to invest in and access the solutions our future relies on. Today's episode looks at two companies focused on increasing access to climate tech, both for investors as well as for consumers. RaiseGreen is an investment platform that enables non-accredited investors to invest in climate solutions ranging from climate tech startups to energy efficiency retrofitting programs to green bonds to renewable energy projects and more. I'm a fan of RaiseGreen's approach, helping people invest across a spectrum of climate solutions and helping more diverse entrepreneurs raise capital. And full disclosure, I'm a RaiseGreen investor. The other company is WeSolar, a community solar developer. WeSolar enables more people to access residential solar, and it successfully raised capital on RaiseGreen. Today we're joined by the CEO and founders of RaiseGreen and WeSolar, Franz Hochstrasser and Kristal Hansley. Both Franz and Kristal bring fascinating backgrounds and perspectives. We talk about the genesis and aspiration of each of their companies, where they are in their journeys, and what it takes to educate people about investing in climate opportunities. Okay, here we go. Enjoy. Franz and Kristal, welcome to Invested in Climate. So great to have you both here today.
Thank you.
Wonderful to be here.
Where are you both dialing in from?
I'm dialing in from Baltimore, Maryland.
And I'm dialing in from Washington, D.C., over on H Street.
Oh, fantastic. Well, great to have two friends from the Atlantic coast. Let's get started by learning about both of you. I don't often have two entrepreneurs join who both have backgrounds in government. And perhaps that's fitting given the focus of both of your companies in democratizing access to climate tech. But let's hear about your stories. Kristal, will you kick us off? Tell us a bit about your background and how it led to founding WeSolar.
My name is Kristal Hansley. I am the CEO of WeSolar. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. I'm also a former foster youth, and my grandparents adopted me at the age of 12. My grandmother was a community organizer, so I am actually a fourth generation community organizer. And that's what actually attracted me to the environmental justice, just transition industry, and how I found myself in community solar. After leaving my 10-year stint in politics on Capitol Hill, I'm a graduate of Howard University. I majored in political science. And while in DC, I had a chance to lobby on behalf of nonprofits and hospitals, schools. And then I also spent some time working as an advisor to the former United States Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid. And then I also worked as a case advisor in the district office for Eleanor Holmes Norton to really see how federal legislation was implemented on the ground. So I have a nice holistic background, whereas, I go from lobbying on behalf of the people to then advising some of the policies on how to solve those issues from a community-centric point of view. And then also the follow-up, because there's a gap between theory and macro policy, but how it's actually being deployed or employed. And so now, with community solar being one of the hottest verticals in the solar space, I just saw that as an opportunity to merge my political community organizing with the environmental space and the need to transition from fossil fuels. And I can share more about the WeSolar mission, but that's a little bit about me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kristal. We will definitely circle back and learn a lot more about community solar and really how it connects to your community organizing background and the importance of community solar. Franz, let's turn to you. Tell us a bit about your story.
Similarly, I grew up out in California, but I got very entranced with politics early on in my life and actually joined the Obama campaign in 2008 and was a field organizer as well. So I kind of got my start in community organizing as well for electoral politics and really rode that wave all the way to Washington, D.C. After the campaign and worked in various jobs in the Obama administration. My first job was actually at the USDA, deploying Recovery Act dollars from the previous largest climate investment in U.S. history. And then I had an opportunity to go and work at the White House Council on Environmental Quality and ultimately at the U.S. State Department, where I helped negotiate the Paris Agreement on climate change. And then I took kind of all of those experiences and went back to graduate school and really synthesized and studied and came up with this business model for RaiseGreen, which puts together the opportunity to get more people involved. So drawing on that community organizing background and ethos and the inclusive approach to solving problems, and then uses it to drive more capital into climate solutions. And so I've been running RaiseGreen as the CEO and co-founder for the last 5 years.
Thanks, Franz. Really fascinating to hear about both of your backgrounds with government, and it does make a lot of sense given the missions of your company. And so glad for that intersection because it can make such a difference as you think about including more people in accessing climate tech. Franz, let's go deeper with you for a bit, and then we'll circle back to Kristal. Franz, you're the founder and CEO of RaiseGreen, an investment platform that enables more people to invest in climate solutions. Let's start with the why. There's already many online investing platforms. Why is there a need for one focused specifically on climate?
To begin with, the IPCC just came out with their 6th assessment report that effectively says, we are in the last few years of really being able to prevent the planet from going into 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, at which point we start to trigger tipping points. So in other words, we are living through one of the most critical periods in human history to prevent catastrophic climate change. And as a result, we need everybody involved in tackling this problem. So we can't just have the moneyed interests going after it. We can't just have governments. We literally need every person in every station of life to take action. So at RaiseGreen, we really see 2 unmet market needs that we are trying to solve as the climate investment platform. One is that people are yearning for something they can do about this problem. 85% of individuals and 99% of millennials, according to Morgan Stanley, want more sustainable investment options, not just greenwashed public equities. Ultimately, what we need to do to solve the problem is deploy more projects, get more actual clean energy on the grid, get more climate solutions to move through the commercialization stages and into the hands and into the ground in everyday life. So that whole society mobilization happens through activating people to fund projects. And RaiseGreen is really just the plumbing to help enable that to happen more quickly and in a more inclusive way. So we are working to connect climate investors who can put in as little as $100 into clean energy projects or climate companies like Kristal's, and unite those climate companies that are seeking capital, that want to structure those offerings in a way that drives community awareness and more adoption for their products as well. So turn their customers into investors, or investimers, as some folks like to call it.
Very good. Franz, for many people, when they hear about crowdfunding, they think of donation or rewards-based crowdfunding, platforms like Kickstarter. RaiseGreen belongs to what's known as investment crowdfunding. Tell us about this space, how it emerged, and how it's evolved, and the importance of the role it plays today.
Kickstarter is sort of the most popularized version of crowdfunding, and that is donation-based crowdfunding, as you said, where you put your money into a project. Maybe they send you the product if they ever make one, or they send you a T-shirt or a water bottle, but you are literally donating your money to them. They have no obligation to give you anything back. So the difference is that RaiseGreen is an SEC and FINRA registered marketplace, or a funding portal is the formal word. And so when we sell securities, there is actually a contract between the company that has raised money and the crowd investor who has given them the money. And that is anything from a debt note where they're borrowing and have a fixed income repayment schedule where they have to repay the investor, to a convertible security of some type, like a simple agreement for future equity or a convertible note, or actual equity in the company that the climate entrepreneur is building. So that's really the difference, is that there is an obligation, a legal obligation, when you make an investment from the company to pay you back if and when they can.
Great. Well, tell us about some of the companies and projects that have raised money on RaiseGreen.
Lucky to be joined by Kristal here today. She leads WeSolar, and they are one of the companies that has used RaiseGreen to raise capital. We've also had some big names in climate tech like Block Power. They've raised about $3 million on the marketplace from several hundred investors. Connecticut Green Bank actually used RaiseGreen, and it has used RaiseGreen now for 5 successive offerings to sell green bond certified offerings for as little as $100 that anyone can buy into. And then we've had solar projects on community centers and schools. And we've had water filtration startups, bioplastics, energy storage. We try to cover the gamut of climate solutions to capture the imagination and the opportunity that's inherent in this massive, economic and societal shift toward low carbon technologies.
And give us a quick sense. What sort of scale have you reached so far? How many companies and projects, and how many investors have invested in RaiseGreen?
We like to think of what we're building as a community, and we have a growing community of about 3,000 investors at this point, 20,000 members, folks that are receiving our newsletter. So would love to have folks who are listening sign up. You don't have to pay anything to open an investor account or to get on our newsletter, and you can invest for as little as $100. In total, we've mobilized about $6 million in capital, and to date, that's across 24 different deals. But we have a pipeline now of over $100 million of folks who are ready to list their projects and looking for investors like you all.
Great. Franz, one of the goals I know for RaiseGreen, as well as just for investment crowdfunding overall, is not just to make investing more accessible, but also making capital raising more inclusive and equitable. Tell us about your track record working with underrepresented founders and really improving access to capital.
We are a deeply mission-driven business. We started the company with the goal of unlocking access to capital for particular areas of climate that are underrepresented, and that's both from the project type and the company type and the difficulty in getting capital towards those sectors. But it's also, who's running those companies and who's building that future that we need, because this transformation from a dirty to clean energy economy really is an opportunity for us to right some of those historical wrongs. Environmental justice communities and fence line communities have been left behind historically as industry continues to advance. And this is a tremendous opportunity to change that. We have been very intentional about that. More than half of the capital raised through RaiseGreen has gone toward either Black or women or underrepresented founders, which is better than 10x the industry average in venture capital. So happy about that. And then we've also, driven almost 100 jobs, about 50,000 tons of CO2 emissions reductions. So both social and environmental benefits are core to what we are calibrating our efforts toward.
Thank you, Franz. Kristal, let's turn to you. Your company, as Franz has mentioned, is actually one that's successfully raised capital on RaiseGreen. So let's hear a bit about WeSolar. And like Franz, let's start with the why. What's the problem that WeSolar is aiming to help solve, and why is it needed?
I would like to approach that question in 2 ways. front facing. We are directly in the communities that are impacted by climate change disproportionately. And so those communities need to have access to the economic resilience that and renewables provide, like savings, like grid protection. And so to be able to generate solar and virtual subscriptions and deliver those to those who would not, communities who would not have access to solar, that is a huge impact for diversification and making sure all communities have access to clean tech. And I would say the other side, from an industry point of view, who else is best suited to address the community needs when you have entrepreneurs that are actually in those communities? And founders and entrepreneurs of color, BIPOC, do not traditionally have access to VC capital. Less than 1% of venture capital goes to minority BIPOC leaders.
It's probably worth taking a step back just to make sure listeners understand what community solar is. It's sometimes also called virtual solar. Help us understand how the community solar market has developed and the role that it's playing and expected to play in the future.
Yes. So when you think of solar, most people think, oh, I need to own a home, because you're actually building and developing a solar system on top of your roof. Community solar really brings 80% of the market that was outside of that, meaning if you lived in a condo, an apartment, you now can have the solar through community solar, which is an off-site location that's just generating the solar power to the grid. There's about 22 states that have a version of community solar, with Maryland and DC being one of the two of the 22 states. And so, just think of it as a new way, a more inclusive way, accessible way for those who would not have access to rooftop solar can now tap into those offsite solar farms and have a virtual credit, solar subscription directly applied, or that savings directly applied to their electricity bills, utility bills.
So if I understand correctly, Kristal, is that when you sign up for WeSolar or any sort of community solar and you're getting a savings, it's actually a savings that's applied against your existing utility bill. Is that right?
That is correct. When you sign up for a community solar subscription via WeSolar, it does not impact your bill. You keep the same utility provider. You now just saying, hey, I know that there's community solar generation. I want this product. I want to support my local green energy solar company. And now you just see that credit directly applied to your utility bill. So if you're in Chicago, Illinois, that would be ComEd. Hey, now you have a community solar credit on that bill. If you're in DC, now you have a community solar credit in Pepco. If you're in Baltimore, now you have a community solar credit and BG&E. So that's simply a savings credit.
Kristal, looking at the WeSolar website, it's clear that you've partnered with several solar developers and you're currently offering several projects to your community. And community solar is, of course, a competitive space. Tell us about WeSolar's competitive advantage that's helping you build these partnerships with solar developers.
I would say that WeSolar has a very competitive narrative in the community solar space. One of the main issues that we solve is that, hey, most community solar developers have a problem acquiring those customers because of the education learning curve that's associated with not just community solar, but any new vertical that isn't just look at the label and understand what it is, right? And so when you have to sell a learning curve, like a technical product like community solar, you really need to have trust. And trust and overcoming that, especially in communities that have been targeted and profiled by other previous energy actors, bad actors, to sell a product that they physically cannot see is a very hard thing to do. Whereas because I have a community background as a founder and I've spent decades in a community, I'm able to offer a superior product to developers who want to deploy rapidly to say, hey, we would like to partner with WeSolar to manage our acquisitions and our subscribers because I have just a cheaper customer acquisition cost because of my brand, but also I already invested in the social capital along with having a cultural competency to reach those communities, whereas you just can't hire a marketing company and do blitz and robocall folks when you have this huge trust issue. So that's how we're able to really work with other developers and states and federal leaders who want to see the market reach their successful goals of a 700% increase over the next 3 years. And we are in a position to really quickly subscribe customers, and any developer that's looking for a company that it can sell community solar, that's what we do. And that's what we have on our website.
Kristal, how do you expect those partnerships with solar developers to evolve over time?
We're in a growth stage. So right now we are subcontracting to the main contractors. I know it's a lot of verbiage, but essentially we assist community solar acquisition companies. And to me, for our investors, it just shows proof of concept. We are growing to actually go after those contracts and be the main contractor since we're doing all of the work.
Great. And for a customer that's interested in one of these projects, walk us through how it works for them. What do your users actually do and experience when they sign on to use WeSolar?
On our platform, folks would go to wesolar.energy and look for their utility by state. Right now, we have access to over 13 states. We're in 13 states by subcontractors. And they will find a community solar system that's directly submitting virtual credits to their utility. It's about a 5-minute application process. There's no credit check. You do not have to pay anything. And you automatically receive savings based off of the different solar requirements of that state or that city and how that solar project was financed. And so savings can vary from 5 to 50%. And it would be based off of the state as well as the household's income. So if anyone is essentially looking to save money and go green, and they do not have access to a rooftop system or can put a rooftop system on their roof, they can go to WeSolar, sign up for a subscription in 5 minutes, and have those savings applied to their bill the following month.
Clearly, a big part of the work that you're doing and the need for community solar is getting more people interested in solar and educating them about the benefits and how it all works. So tell us about how that works in practice. What are you doing to recruit more community solar customers, and what's working best for you as you are out there helping educate more customers?
I would say being authentic. You have a lot of opportunists because this is a time where we have a large amount of money going into climate change. And when you have a lot of movement that's happening at the whole scale, folks are really skeptical about everything and they also don't understand it. So I think just having a brand from a community lens that's doing the work that allows us to cut through a lot of white noise and really speak to the communities that we're serving. It's almost like when somebody signs up for a social media account and you have those accounts that have authentic followers versus those accounts that have maybe a lot of followers, but they're bots, right? And the ones that have those authentic followers, it's organic, it's spreading. That's what our brand is, right? We're not buying customers. We don't have to sell ourselves because we are what we deliver. And to me, to have a successful business like RaiseGreen or WeSolar, those are the motifs that's reoccurring. When you're true to the mission, when you have authenticity, when you have proof of concept, you have a track record, you will succeed in whatever your mission is.
Thank you, Kristal. Franz, communicating to people about climate change and getting them to actually part with their money and make investments is something that you're also gaining a lot of experience with. What's working? And what have you learned doesn't work as well?
Yeah, lots and lots. So when you ask a crowd of people what they think the most influential human emotion is, mostly you get the answer fear. And actually, the studies that I've seen suggest that it's in fact pride that is the most motivating emotion. Pride actually comes from the things that Kristal was talking about: trust, belief, hope, and opportunity and access. When we think about communicating on climate, we think about activating trust and belief and hope and opportunity. And that comes from giving access. So 9 out of 10 Americans basically for the last 100 years who are non-accredited investors, which means they make less than $200,000 a year or are worth less than $1 million in net worth, have not had access to invest in private companies that aren't traded on the stock market. We get pride and trust and hope when we have real buy-in and folks can put their money into things that they believe in. And that, I think, is a lot of what WeSolar represents. And that's what RaiseGreen is designed as a tool to help further. There's actually a new study out from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences just this week that talks about basically the state of the art of climate change mitigation interventions for behavioral change. And what guides that. And some of their subgroup analysis suggests that financial incentives and social comparisons are the two most effective things that kind of drive people's behavioral change. So that means giving somebody a way to benefit financially from taking an action, and then giving them the ability to talk to their neighbors about why they did it, to influence their neighbors and to give them that same access and opportunity. These are sometimes called credibility enhancing displays. When I hear something from somebody I trust as a confidant or as a friend, I'm much more likely to take that advice than I am if I hear it blasted across my Netflix screen or in my social media feed from some paid advertisement. It comes down to trust. It comes down to leaders that you believe in and hearing those messages, and the story that motivates you to be proud of taking that action. What doesn't work, I think, are doom and gloom and complexity without education. We've seen those that try to rip down individual and collective climate action call upon how futile efforts are, when in fact literally every effort that we take right now ripples for generations because of how critical a time it is to reduce emissions and to transform our economy.
And it really summarized kind of like the it factor about WeSolar. And I struggle with that because I'm really modest in a sense. I'm like, yeah, we're doing some cool stuff, but it's authentic. And I don't really have like that external psychoanalysis of what my brand and what we're doing from an outsider point of view. And I can honestly say that it is pride, right? Like when people invest or are part or sign up, we deliver a different type of punch in a sense that, and we're able to punch way above our weight class as a smaller firm because we have that authentic buy-in. And when folks say, oh yeah, we're part of the WeSolar community, we're supporting these BIPAC leaders that's really addressing climate change that impacts their community the most as a society, like people are very prideful of that. And so, wow, you actually gave me an answer to something that I really didn't understand. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to add on to that. That was just like, I was like, oh my God, that's it.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Kristal. It's very cool to see how each of your experiences helping people invest in climate solutions really unlocks insights for one another. Now, Kristal, I'd love to hear about your experience with RaiseGreen. You successfully raised money through the RaiseGreen platform. Tell us about that experience.
RaiseGreen is one of the most important financial institutions in our space. It allowed WeSolar to hire very senior, high-level executives out the gate. And that is really important to be able to scale and to show dominance in the marketplace, especially when we're talking about a very competitive industry. No one cares if I'm a woman leader when I'm negotiating a power purchase agreement or I'm going up against large solar companies that have hundreds of folks on their team and lawyers, but at least allow me to play with the big boys because now I'm able to have access to capital. I'm able to use the narrative and the platforms of raising money, but also allows me to get my story out there. So when I'm raising money and when any founder is raising money on the platform, not only are they raising money to the public and having that community equity capital going into your business, but you're also attracting subscribers. You're attracting more environmental justice leaders who wouldn't have been able to hear about you because it's a holistic marketing strategy. It's really critical for folks to diversify and look for options outside of the traditional like energy equities or public equities. It's almost like a partner marriage in heaven, because now you have a platform that says, hey, I not only have been through walking other founders through this process, but I actually believe in what you do authentically. So we was able to raise over $200,000 on the platform, and that allowed us working capital to recruit executive talent for the WeSolar team.
Thanks, Kristal. Franz, you're actually in the midst of a crowdfunding campaign yourself. You have a campaign on WeFunder to raise money for RaiseGreen, and that campaign is open until the end of April. Tell us about the opportunity and why listeners should check it out.
We've been building this business now in market for going on 3 years, and we've been raising capital through private issuances under Reg D, like most businesses, which can only be invested in by accredited investors for the most part, or venture capitalists. We finally basically decided we need to put our stock where our company values are. We need to actually live our truth here and open up our own community round so that we can let folks buy into RaiseGreen and own a piece of what we're building. And we've found that, thus far, there's a great reaction from folks that have put in as little as $100 into RaiseGreen and support us not just as investors on our marketplace, but also as owners of our business as well. So we want that rising tide to truly lift all boats, and that's why we came to market with our own community round.
Franz, we've definitely heard some really clear arguments about the good that RaiseGreen is doing, about the beneficial role in the climate finance ecosystem and the impact on climate and on opening access for more founders and investors. But what about RaiseGreen as a business? How big can it be? And what are some of the key metrics and milestones that you're aiming to reach to make the business a success as well?
Yeah, you just triggered a memory for me. Back in 2019, in the early days, we got invited to go and speak at the UN Climate Summit in New York at UN headquarters. And I gave a speech about what we were doing and sang, one of the sort of activist songs of "The people going to rise like water, got to calm this crisis down." I hear the voice of my great-granddaughters saying, "Keep it in the ground." And after my speech, the announcer said, "Did we just hear the birth of a new economy?" And then he said, "Well, it is if we want it to be." The future is what we choose. And I think that's kind of what the IPCC report says, is this generation, this moment in time is the moment in which we are deciding what the future 50, 100 years are going to look like. It can be as big as we make it. There are $5 trillion in checkable deposits sitting in Americans' bank accounts that are gathering dust. And as we just have seen with the SVB collapse and Signature Bank collapse, banks are also not necessarily the greatest place to keep your money. It's really a choice for anyone. This is not financial, legal, accounting, or tax advice, FYI. But from a fundamental standpoint, we take a success fee on each dollar raised, and we have no limitations on how much transactions and how many listings we can do or how many people can invest. We want to be going from 3,000 investors this year to 30,000 investors next year to 300,000 the following year. And that takes a lot of credibility enhancing displays, a lot of trust, and a lot of amazing companies like Kristal's stepping forward and saying, "Hey, we want to raise capital through a community round as well, and we'll work with RaiseGreen to structure it."
And if you're successful and able to go from 3,000 to 30 to 300,000, what sort of business does that create for RaiseGreen?
It does create a significant economic opportunity for us. We've driven about $500,000 in revenue to date collectively. The opportunity, I think, is immense as we go into this stage of having the Inflation Reduction Act in place and having the certainty that provides to all climate technologies, according to Climate Tech VC, reducing the costs of climate technologies by an average of about 40% because some of those incentives are super high. We view this year, 2023, as the year of climate investing, and we want to drive $1 million in revenue this year alone or more. And then, ultimately, this can be the largest climate investing community in the world. But it comes back to what that moderator said back at the UN, which is if we choose, and it's a choice that people make every day in their daily lives.
Thanks, Franz. Kristal, what about you? What's next in your trajectory, and what are some of the key milestones and aspirations that you're aiming for?
I would say some of our milestones is one, we did about 200,000 in revenue. We're on track to do about 2.6 million, largely because of the largest investment into renewables and just a 700% increase in my vertical community solar. So we are taking on larger acquisition portfolios and dealing with more high-end clients that's looking for some environmental social impact solutions. And I would say a milestone is to scale from a person of 5 to 50 to 500. I see WeSolar as being able to go public one day. And so, I would like, more opportunities for the start. And I want more competitors, right? And with more crowdfunding, and as RaiseGreen is more folks being able to enter into this space that look like me, that's the future that I want to see, where I'm attending conferences and I'm not one out of 100.
Kristal, Franz, we're nearing the end of our time together. Any final points before we wrap up?
Maybe I'll hit on just one stat that I heard, which is 91% of human adults on the planet today have a smartphone within arm's reach almost every hour of every day. And RaiseGreen exists to make it easy for you to use that immense computing power to take real climate action by putting your money into clean energy and climate projects at the community scale. So we would encourage you to do it. Check it out. And every day that goes by that we don't put capital toward climate solutions is a day that we lose to make direct and significant societal change. So just calling on everyone to step up and take action.
I would add that communities know best what their problems are, and they're most primed to solve those issues. They're right there. And so having resources is the main issue, and they don't have the resources to solve the problems that they have the solutions to. So making more available, like crowdfunding through RaiseGreen, it allows those communities to address the problems by providing the resources that they need.
Kristal, Franz, thank you so much for being here today and for the incredible work that you're both doing.
Thank you so much, Jason, and great chatting with you both. Thanks, Kristal.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Thanks, Franz.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Invested in Climate. Please remember to rate us on Apple, Spotify, or Google. Find show notes, sign up for updates, get in touch, and visualize your climate action at investedinclimate.com. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial, accounting, or legal advice. Thanks again.